Even if he quietly let her go, she would still be made the least of the least, more than a woman already was. If he kept her, she would always be shamed or mocked by people who knew her story. She was scared, but before she knew how any of that would turn out, she knew that the power of this world isn't the final power, and she said, let it be. She couldn't imagine exactly what would come, but she knew that this baby was going to turn the world upside down. And Mary said, I'm bursting with God news. I'm dancing the song of my Savior God. God took one look at me, and look what happened. I'm the most fortunate woman on earth. What God has done for me will never be forgotten. The God whose very name is holy, set apart from all others. His mercy flows in wave after wave on those who are in awe before him. He barred his arms and showed his strength, scattered the bluffing braggarts. He knocked tyrants off their high horses, pulled victims out of the mud. The starving poor sat down to a banquet. The callous rich were left out in the cold. He embraced his chosen child, Israel. He remembered and piled on the mercies, piled them high. It's exactly what he promised, beginning with Abraham and right up to now.
Join me in this affirmation of our faith. Lord God, you choose the very least and raise us up to greatness. You take the weak, the poor, and the blind, and raise us out of darkness. For nothing is impossible with God. We give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Teach us obedience, Lord, in every part of our lives. Ears to hear your word, hands to do your work, feet to walk your path, a heart for all your people, a mouth to shout your praise, a childlike faith. Grant us humility that makes us willing, and confidence that says to the possible and the impossible, I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. Amen. Welcome to worship this morning. Liturgy literally means the work of the people, and it's the form our public worship takes. Our Advent liturgies this year will follow a slightly different rhythm that you might be used to, but I'm excited that we're on this journey together. I appreciate Haley starting us off this morning. What we're going to do first is give this tree some attention. We've got a basket here of some ornaments. We got about 10 or 12 ornaments, so I'm just going to ask for some volunteers, kids, adults, anybody that wants to help, just to come grab an ornament and hang it on the tree.
Come forward.
They're not going to jump up by themselves. And I'm going to ask Steve to come up and work with us.
So, one of the things that we do, during the Christmas time is forever, it's kind of what we call like a hanging of the green. Some people say greens, but one liturgy says green and the other does say greens because there's more than one. But the hanging of the green service is what we do when we light the tree. And so I wanted to go over some of the elements and basically describe to you and explain to you why we use certain things during the Lent season. One of the things that sometimes gets lost in contemporary or modern worship is some of the meaning of what we do and why we do what we do. And I don't think we should ever lose sight of Advent or what's really going on. So here are some things that I will show you real briefly. The first thing that I'm going to show you is these are known as chrismons. That means Christ monogram. Chrismons are always done in one of three or all of three colors. They're either, and I take that back, there are some people that use silver also, but they're white, they're gold, or silver, or sometimes you can have a little bit of off white, but for the most part, you're going to find those three colors. Now, each one of the chrismons, and we brought some of these over from the traditional worship. Their tree was already decorated, but we wanted to decorate ours. All these monograms are made or have been made by people in the church. And like to say, a butterfly representing new life, the Star of David, of course, representing the star above Bethlehem. And then you have the fish, and that was a sign of the Christians. The cross, several different crosses. And then, of course, the initials that were put on the cross when Jesus died. So there are several different things that go on the tree. The other thing that we use during this time is, of course, this sometimes will have an Advent wreath on it. In our case, it doesn't, but it has the candles. And the candles represent our steps towards the Christ candle, which is in the middle. So you go all the way around, and then you'll get to the pink candle, and the pink candle is known as the shepherd's candle. Okay, and that's a little bit different. Okay, so you've got the three purple, and then you work up to that. You'll see a wreath is in a circle. That is a sign of everlasting love. You also see a tree is pointed up to God, a Christmas tree. Christmas trees were at one time hung upside down in the house, which is very interesting. And a lot of times they were even hung from a ceiling, which is even more interesting, isn't it? But that representation was that God came down for us. Also, a lot of times you will see holly, or you'll see evergreen. Evergreen is a representation of eternal life. Evergreen doesn't die. It's forever. And so you'll see that. Also, in some churches, they use berries. If you go in our sanctuary, one of the things as Pat Glenn was coming in to do the windows in there this week, I saw her on Friday and she said, "Can I steal some of the berries off the tree?" And I said, "Well, I don't guess God would mind. You're going to use them for his house." But those red berries represent the blood of Jesus on the evergreen. And so when you look at things, everything we do during the Christmas season has a symbol. And one of the reasons you have to remember that is because you were dealing, especially years upon years ago, with an illiterate society. Not illiterate because they wanted to be, illiterate because they didn't have the means, the resources. You know, I always say everybody was ignorant before the internet got here, right? I mean, now we can find anything out. But they used all that as symbols to show their respect and to show how God had impacted their life. And so when you see those things, understand that all those things are very meaningful for our Christmas. So here's an idea we got. Okay, so I'm gonna throw several ideas at y'all today. Okay, you're gonna be like, "Steve, that's an overload." But one of the things we wanted to do to complete our tree is we want you to either go home and make a chrismon, and some of y'all may not have time for that, or we want you to buy a family ornament and put it on our tree. Bring it next week. We're going to do the same thing we did, and you're going to get an opportunity to put an ornament on this tree. And why are we doing that? Because we want you all to be a part of this service and a part of what we're doing. And it's something we've never done. Joey and I were sitting talking, and I said, what a great idea that families could go out, maybe as they're going out to do stuff, and they could find an ornament that represents something in their life that they want to put upon the tree. You know, it could be your name. I don't care what it is, but that's how we're going to continue to decorate the tree. Drake, are y'all ready to make an announcement, or y'all headed out? Yeah, we're good. You good? You sure? Joey, are we at that time for their announcement?
We can announce or we can sing. Why don't we announce?
Why don't we
We'll
announce?
announce and I'll jump up with y'all.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing? Sorry, we're announcing this in all the services, so we're just kind of all over the place today, but it's good to see all y'all. Let me get my notes out so I make sure I get it all. If y'all don't know, this is Kate and June. They're part of our youth group, and we were excited because a few months ago they came to us with an idea. They wanted to feed the hungry in our community, in our area. And so their initial idea was they wanted to serve a hot meal here. Now, since that first idea, we've done a few different things. We've got 3 projects that are going to be continual throughout our time with our youth ministry and our church. The first one that we did about a month and a half ago was we handed out 55 bags of groceries to anybody that came up and needed them out front. And that was a lot of fun. We got to meet some real nice people and make some friends and get to see a lot of families with kids that we hadn't met before. So that was real exciting to see that they were up for coming and joining us and taking advantage of that. And so that was the first one. That was a good kickoff, and we're going to keep doing that. After that, we had an idea for a thing called a blessing box. And we were blessed with also, we've got a few scouts in our church. We've got a few more that got Eagle Scout projects coming up. But Thomas Schultz, if you don't know him, you'll probably recognize his twin sisters first. So if you see them, you know Thomas is the one with them. Him and his scout troop got together for his Eagle Scout project and built the blessing box, which as you're leaving, it's on the exit to the parking lot. Is a big, tall, single-door building right under the little trees there as you leave. And so what that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have stocked in that blessing box canned goods, home goods like toothpaste, toothbrushes, soap. We've got things like toboggans, gloves, socks, and those things we've noticed have been taken, and that is really great because those are things that we can really use in the cold seasons. And so that's for anybody, anytime in need to come and utilize. Finally, the original idea. They wanted to call it the Lion and the Lamb Cafe, and so tonight at 5 o'clock we were having our first ever Lion and the Lamb Cafe. At 3 o'clock, the youth and a bunch of other folks from the church are going to gather to start preparing a spaghetti supper for anyone in our community that could use a free meal. We've been working with Team and been taking them flyers when they hand out their goods during the week and hope to just invite that part of our community in, and from there we'll see where that goes. This is our first night, so we're excited to see who from Team comes. If any of this sounds like something you're interested in, we know we've already got a bunch of other folks on board. Find me after. I will be between here and there somewhere, catching up with people and talking to them about this. So if you have not connected with us and would like to, we would love to have you as part of this project because it's real exciting. I wanted to thank Kate and June for their vision because this was all them. They came and sat down with us and said, we want to share this, and it's just grown so much since then, all the way to even another student using it as their Eagle Scout project and giving us that mode of service to finish the blessing box. So thanks to Thomas as well, and thanks to all of you. A lot of you have already contributed through giving canned goods, giving supplies for the blessing box, or helping out with things like preparing for this supper tonight and the groceries a few months ago. So we just are so excited about all the opportunities this is bringing for us to meet and bring Christ to others in our area. So thank you all. Y'all are awesome.
Good morning, guys. Let's do our first song here, Cornerstone. We threw this in about 10 minutes ago, so we're going to need y'all's help on this line. So if everybody will please stand, I think everybody probably should know Cornerstone. So. Good? Good.
Yesterday was World AIDS Day. And the only reason I know that is because I follow the United Methodist Florida Church and Society on Twitter. In addition to physical suffering, millions of people around the world are stigmatized, harassed, and discriminated against because of this disease. I had an uncle who died of AIDS about 20 years ago or so. And at the time, I didn't know the truth about his illness. But when he was in the hospital with only a few days to live, I was cautioned to be careful about touch and to wash my hands after, and I wish, with hindsight extended, I could just hug him. Our denomination, the United Methodist Church, calls on each congregation and annual conference to advocate at all levels of government for support for HIV and AIDS initiatives in the United States, and to work in our church and community to overcome barriers, the barriers we have to compassionate embrace of all people. And this is just one example of what it means to be called to serve the least and the outcast and the marginalized. And I'm glad that our church reminds us of that call. Let's go to God in prayer. God, you are the creator of all things and of us. The universe exists on your word. And you gave that up to come and be in the flesh. And God in flesh, Jesus Christ, didn't report to the authorities or settle in with the high and the powerful. Jesus went to the edges, to the unwanted, the unclean, the stranger, the outsider. His work was to look in their faces and say, I love you, and I'm here in this mess with you, and to show us that every face is the face of a person created and loved by God. And that's the work that makes your kingdom come and your will be done. And that's why after all this time, it's been hundreds of years, we open our hearts and we pray as he taught us, not from duty, but from love and a desire to be more in line with you. And so we pray, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Now we invite our children from ages 3 up through 2nd grade to be dismissed to Children's Church. You'll meet an assembly in the back. She'll walk you over, and you can have a special time.
Well, good morning. I know I've already said that, but that gives me time to get my iPad where it needs to be. Good deal. A few weeks ago, I stood up here and nothing worked, so I had to go just off the cuss. And I hope that doesn't happen again. All right, you got the clicker for me? Yeah, thank you. All right, so last week we started this conspiracy. And what I told you was that forever you've had a conspiracy against you. You have had the world conspire to make Christmas something that it's really not. And to make Christmas more about the commercialization and more about the giving and more about just the hustle and the bustle than it needs to be. And so we said last week, what if we conspired back? What if we were the conspirator? And what if we really thought and understood that Advent could make a difference in this world? And I mean, that's truly why Jesus came. Jesus came to make a difference in this world. That was his reason for coming. He didn't come to just visit. He didn't come to just hopefully hang out with 12 guys. He didn't come just to mess up all the Pharisees and the Sadducees. No, he really came to save the world. And so can Advent really make a difference? And that's what we're looking at. So last week we said that the first thing you have to approach Advent with is worship. You have to be able to come into a worshipful atmosphere, a worshipful spirit. You have to approach Advent different than maybe you've approached it before. If you realize that everybody that came to the manger, everybody that was on that first Christmas morning, once they left the manger, their life was different. They were changed. We're going to talk about this in 2 weeks, and I'm going to do a just based on the shepherds. But the shepherds come to Jesus, and when they left, it was so different. They were so different. They went and told everybody what they had witnessed. It had changed their life. And so I guess the question we ask at Advent is, does going to the manger truly change our life? So this week we go into the second part of our Advent conspiracy, and that's to spend less. And if you're a retailer or you're a financial advisor or you're somebody that you're like, all right, Steve, don't go there. Now listen, when I say spend less, I'm not necessarily talking about ultimately spending less than what you've already budgeted to spend, but maybe changing the way you spend what you're about to spend. Okay? About 20 years ago, the average person expected to receive somewhere around $298 worth of gifts during Christmas time. So when I was growing up, I'm even more than 20 years ago, I would get about $298, give or take a little bit, in gifts. Whether that was Santa that brought them or my parents that gave them, okay? Now, nowadays, that number has climbed to about $1,300 per person. That's in 20 years. That's kind of the average of where we are. So what do we think about when we can say, let's spend less, but let's be able to do more? How can we spend less and do more? So I want to look at some scripture this morning. The first comes from Matthew. I'm going to spend a lot of time in Matthew today. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. And this is so important. And the word money there, the Greek word for that, is really mammon. It's not necessarily money. Mammon means anything that you worship that's outside of God. Mammon may not necessarily mean just money. It could mean property. It could mean power. It could mean anything that you put in the place of God. And here's what it says. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, here's the funny thing about that. Jesus doesn't say you can try. Jesus doesn't say there might be a possibility. He says you can't do it. One is going to have a hold of you. One is going to outweigh the other one. You can't have it in the same spot. Here's another scripture. This is out of Timothy. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. We know some of those people, don't we? We know some of those people that get rich quick, jump on it while it's hot, trade, whatever it is. They do, and we know that it winds up a lot of times in ruin and destruction. And you hate to see someone's life that ends up that way. And here he goes. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Now, sometimes we take that out of context and we say the root of money is evil. Now, that's not what it says. The root for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. I know a lot of people that have made a lot of money, that have given a lot of money away, that have saved a lot of lives, that have made a difference in a lot of places. I've known people that God just continued to bless because they were a blessing to other people. I literally knew a guy who tried to outgive God. He would try to give everything he had, and ultimately he could not do it. And his life is still a testimony of what God is doing in his life. And he'll tell you it's because of God. It's not because of anything that I've done. It's because God blesses me to be a blessing. Some, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So, here's where we are today. We're at the worship fully, spend less. That's where we want to go. So, the first question to ask is, Do you still think that Advent can change the world? Do you think that Christmas can change the world? Do you think that people still can recognize, understand, or even fathom what Christmas is really all about? And the only way that's going to happen is through us. The only way that people are going to know what the true meaning of Christmas is through us. All right, so I'm a big fan of Christmas movies. Anybody like Christmas movies? And you always have those staple movies, right? Christmas Vacation. Everybody loves Eddie, right? You gotta love Eddie, you know. Matter of fact, we had somebody in Fayette that did a Christmas yard decoration, and they had him out there pumping his sewage, and a picture of him out there. It was great. I loved it. It was one of my favorites. So a few years ago, I stumbled upon another Christmas movie. For a long time, my new favorite Christmas movie was Elf. I love the scene with the midget coming down, or vertically challenged person coming down the table, right? That's my favorite scene in a movie. You know, call me that one more time. He puts a whooping upon Will Ferrell. But then I came across the movie, and I've already watched it this year, and it is called Surviving Christmas. Some of y'all may have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. So the movie has Ben Affleck in it, and Ben Affleck is a very, 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 very wealthy guy. He's got this New York studio apartment, or maybe it's Chicago, I don't know forget where it takes place, but he overlooks the whole city. But the problem is he's made a lot of money, but every Christmas he spends lonely. And so here's what he does. So he decides that he's going to go back to the house that he was raised in. Of course, he doesn't live there anymore, and his mom has since passed on. And he goes up to the door, and he decides he's going to rent this family for Christmas. Like I'm talking like at $25,000. Like if y'all want to come over and be a part of my family for Christmas, come on. All right? I'll settle for less than that, really. I mean, we might do 500, you know. But anyway, so the whole premise of the movie is about him buying Christmas. I mean, literally buying Christmas. From the gifts to the relationships to everything about it. And I won't run the movie for you, but it is funny. It is. And it's funny in a dark way. But there's a truth about it. Because sometimes that's what we try to do. We try to buy Christmas. We try to buy love. We try to buy the right gift. We try to do the right thing. We try to go on the right trip. We try to give the right car. By the way, I love that new commercial where the two GMs and the lady goes, I love it. No, that one's not you. I love it. It's great. But I don't think many people give 2 cars for Christmas. I don't know. But anyway, but we are always trying to buy. We're always trying to get the right thing. And I will tell you this now, and I promise this. The greatest gift you're going to ever give anybody is not a present, but is your presence. Being with people in their life. That's what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember what you gave them. As a matter of fact, I went through the office this week as I was preparing. I said, tell me one of the greatest gifts you ever got for Christmas. I was just asking my staff. And I love David's story. David said, I was serving this church, and it was in Anniston area. And we had 5 or 6 African-American families that came there, and a few Caucasian families, a small church. And I had given everybody in the church a Christmas card. And it was like 2 weeks before Christmas Eve. And on Christmas Eve, I had this lady, and I had been to her house, as David explained it, and like they had no furniture. Like they had folding chairs in their house. That was their furniture. And a mattress that laid on the floor. And he said this lady had taken a Christmas card, and she had actually peeled off part of the edge where a picture of the family was on there. And she had taped like a picture of her family on that. She gave it to me for Christmas. And he said, out of all the Christmas gifts I ever got, that was the greatest. Because it was done with love. And it was done with thought. And it was about being present in someone's life. And so what I'm saying is that we cannot bank on being able to just give somebody something and make them happy. That's not how it works. And so we really need to get into thinking about how are we going to do this Christmas thing. All right, so why do we even give gifts on Christmas? Have you ever thought about that? If you go back and you ever read Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Christmas, you'll find out that Christmas really doesn't even take place in the winter. Like, we made it that, and the reason we put Christmas where it was is because there was a pagan holiday around that time, and the Christians go, you know what? We ought to do our own holiday to combat the pagan holiday. And so they moved it into this time when everything lines up right here in December, right? The other reason we give gifts, and I think most of the time, is because of the wise men. The wise men are like, well, if Jesus got gifts, so am I, right? And that's kind of how we look at it. If Jesus got 3 of them, and he got some good gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, you know. But the truth is that even in that, there was some thought. The Magi, they're people that look at the stars. I can't ever remember if that's astrologer or astronomer. I get them confused sometimes. But they were people that studied the stars. They knew the constellations. And the Christmas story we get is that, like, they showed up within, like, 30 minutes, right? Like, it was a neon sign. Jesus, right here, born, right? No, they followed a star. The problem is they followed that star for a year. The scripture says that within a year they came to visit Jesus, bearing him gifts. Now, the reason that they were even asked to go visit Jesus was because Herod said, I want to know where this new king is going to be born. Because Herod was so scared that people were going to take away what he was building, what he was doing. As you know, Herod got mad at somebody in his own family. He just had them killed. That's the way Herod operated. Herod didn't care about people, but people loved him. And people say, why did they love him? Because he was able to give them things. As a matter of fact, Herod is actually credited with the first air conditioning system. He came up with some ventilation system within one of his palaces that blew cold air somehow through the thing. You go back and do the research. This guy was great at building. And the people that were rich were getting richer off of Herod. And so the rich people love Herod. And you know, Herod's worst nightmare is that Jesus, or somebody like Jesus, was going to come into the world and say, you know what? It's not all about riches. It's not all about wealth. It's not all about what you can get. And so he sends these magi and he says, go find the Christ King. And he lies because I want to go worship him. No. You want to go kill him. Because at that time, you're taxing the people almost 75% of their salary to build what you're building for the rich. Could you imagine that? Getting your pay stub and 75%, well, some of y'all might be there, but 75% of it's going to Uncle Sam? That'll make you want to get up and go on Monday morning, won't it? And especially when you're not getting anything out of it. And Herod's worst fear. And you know what Jesus does? Jesus does exactly what Herod's fear was. Rather than become a king that says, let's build more, let's do more, he becomes a servant king that says, let's serve more. I mean, you ever thought about the 12 disciples? He pulled them out of the comfort of their house and put their bed in the dirt. You didn't follow Jesus because you're going to get rich. You didn't follow Jesus because you were going to get more. You followed Jesus so that you could serve. And that's the exact thing that Herod had in mind. That was his fear. That's why he's at this place where we need this guy killed. And so what do the Magi do? The Magi come in and they visit Jesus and they give him 3 gifts. They give him gold that represents royalty. And it wasn't a whole lot of gold, but some people think it was enough gold for him to get out of there for the year, 2 years, 3 years that they had to go to Egypt and flee. They didn't go back home. You remember? They're killing the infants. And then they give them frankincense. And frankincense was a perfume kind of thing. It could be used in medicinal reasons too. And they give him myrrh, which represents his death. Those were the gifts. And even though they don't sound practical, they were very practical. But it wasn't the gifts that mattered. It was that also the Magi, as they came to Jesus, they left in a different direction. Their meeting with Jesus changed their life. They didn't return to Herod. Because you know what? If they had returned to Herod, Jesus would have been dead. No. Going to the manger changed them. And here's the funny thing that people don't understand. In biblical time, when you took a stand, this is especially true in the New Testament, for the way, it meant that everybody else quit doing business with you. So like you were rich. Let's say you're a fur trader and you're trading with people, and all of a sudden they ask you to pay something or do something. You go, no, I can't pay that because I follow the way now. They said, you're cut off. What do you mean I'm cut off? Like you're cut off from society. Like, I don't think we understand what a stance it took for them to stand up for Jesus, to be totally cut off and say, so if you're a follower of the way, and that's why they call it the way, then you're not a follower over here. You can't do it. That's what Jesus was talking about. You can't serve both. And in their time, you really couldn't. Because as soon as you said yes to Jesus, you just became poor. You just gave up every opportunity you had to be rich, to have things. Because you couldn't serve both because the government wouldn't let you. You either serve God or you serve them. And that's what's so amazing about this scripture. It's what's so amazing about Zacchaeus that we went over a few weeks ago. Here's a tax collector. He's hated, man. Head of the pyramid scheme. Rich as he could be. Extortionist. I've got everything. And here's what he said. When he met Jesus, he said, I'm going to change. But not only am I going to change, I'm going to be a follower of the way. And the reason he gave everything back is because he knew he wasn't going to be rich from that point on. Once he said yes to Jesus, he could no longer say yes and be a tax collector. It changed everything. And that's what it means and to look at when we talk about spending less. So what makes a good gift? Is it the amount of money you spend on a gift? Does a gift come only from certain stores or have a certain name brand on it? Is a good gift one that is completely practical? Or have you ever thought about the gifts that you give? Have you ever thought about what the significance of those gifts are? Have you ever even considered where those gifts come from? Was it child labor that made them? I don't know. But your gifts can change the way people see Advent. Last week I was going by a house that was decorating, and it was 2 days after Thanksgiving. And they were putting up a sign. They had a sign that was in their yard and it was illuminated, and it said, Jesus is the reason for the season. And I thought about that. I thought, man, that's such a good sign. Such a good reminder. But the more I thought about it, the more I pondered it, the more I prayed about it, I thought, that's great. But how many of us just have Jesus for this season? Shouldn't Jesus be the reason for all seasons? Isn't Advent a time for us to center so the rest of our lives is changed? So we do things in a different way. We move in a different way. See, spending less does not mean that you love any less. And when we focus on Matthew and we focus on what it says today, it says, for where your treasure is, so in there will be your heart. See, your treasure is where your heart is. Let me ask you a question. Where does your heart spend most of its time? Where are most of your heart thoughts? I told a story that I shouldn't have told a few weeks ago in big church, traditional worship. I always called it big church growing up. But anyway, and I was telling the story in children's moment. It dawned on me I probably shouldn't have told it because it was about them cutting this guy's heart out, okay? And like that probably didn't go over well with some of the kids. And so Laura puts on Facebook, if you need Steve to explain anything that he said in the sermon today, he'll be glad to do it. So anyway, but I wanted to tell you the story about Dave Livingston. And Dave Livingston, this is the story I was referring to. And basically Dave Livingston was a missionary in Africa. And he devoted his whole life. He was actually from Britain. And he went over to Africa. And I mean, when I talk about doing ministry and mission, he converted a whole continent. I mean, that's how popular this guy was. And I mean, he went into these villages like where they like to eat missionaries. You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's the kind of places he went to share the gospel. There was no fear in his life. Well, he actually dies of malaria. And he died at his bedside. And he was kneeling to pray and journaling when he died. Now, when he died, Britain wanted to get his body back because they wanted to give him a proper burial. And so they contacted the people in the little island, Ilala, where he was. And they said, you can't have him back. He belongs here. And they're like, look, like, he's dead. Like, and they're thinking, are you going to try to bring him back to life? I mean, what are we doing here? And they're like, no. His heart was here. He spent his time here. Even when he could go home on furlough, he couldn't wait to get back here. And so Britain didn't know what to do. And so the people of Africa decided to do something. And so what they did was they actually took his heart out. And they took his journal book. And they buried it under a tree where he would go spend time with God every day. And there they buried his heart. And what they told Britain, they said, Britain, you can have his body back. But his heart is here in Africa. Now let me ask you a question. If someone was to make the decision for you where they're going to bury your heart, where would it be? Where would they bury your heart? Where your kids say your heart is? Where other students in your class say your heart is? Where would they bury your heart? You know, I thought about that all week. Because where your heart is, their soul is your life. Can't be different. Can't be divided. People know where your investment is. People know where your heart is. And that's a question that I continually ask myself. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I get off the path. We all do. But I want to be known for someone whose heart saw the way God saw. The last thing is that Jesus in this Matthew 6 verse talks about our eyesight. And our eyes being a window to our heart. And I'm not talking about bad eyesight. I know some of you are, if you're not wearing glasses or contacts, you can't see anything. You're legally blind. I know. That's not the sight I'm talking about. I'm not talking about your eyesight. I'm talking about your God sight. Are you able to see as God sees? You know what the Scripture says? The Scripture says, for if your eyes are good, therefore your body is also good. That you are all good. These are Jesus' words. And then he says this, but if your eyes are bad, so in there is your life. How are your eyes? How do you see the world? How do you see other people? How do you see differences? How do you see those that aren't like you? How do you see Advent? How do you see your family? Because I guarantee you, however you see that in God's vision is going to be exactly how your heart is. And it can't be any different. And if it's not where it needs to be, then we can change the way we see life. We can change the way we see things. We can change the way that our bad eye turns to good. And what we do is we take an inventory of our life. And we ask that question. Where would they bury my heart? And where are my eyes focused? That'll change the way you spend money. That'll change the way you give gifts. That'll change the way you do for other people. See, a house can't stand divided. And you can't do good if your heart is bad. And if your eyes don't see the way God wants them to see, you can't pour into your heart. So this morning I want to do something. We're going to do 3 things this morning. I told you you'd be confused by the end of the day. So this week I was talking to David and we were talking about something we could do. Something we could do for you all to kind of give you an example of what we're talking about here. You know, so often you hear something preached, but then you're like, how do I do that? How do I apply that? You know, my goal is hopefully every week when you hear something, you take it in your life and apply it. And so I saw this thing on Facebook last week where they were writing Christmas cards to people that were overseas. And I thought, man, that's a great idea. So I sit in my office with David. We were talking about the sermon series. We were talking about where we're going with stuff. And I told him that idea, and he said, that's a good idea, but now that it's out on social media, I bet a ton of people will do it. If you still want to do it, please do it. But he said, you know what, Steve? What if rather than do that, we got the church to do 100 cards to homeless people in Birmingham? Write a Christmas card to homeless people. Can you imagine that? They don't have a physical address. They're not getting a Christmas card, but this card may change who they are. And here's the funny thing, you don't even know who's going to get it. So I did this in the first service. I'm going to do it in this service too. I'm going to put out 20 cards across these front chairs as you come to get communion and as you come to give your offering this morning. And what I want you to do is I want you to just pick up a card. A family can do it. It doesn't have to be each individual in the family. I want you to do it as a family. And first off, I want you to pray over this card. You don't know who's going to get it, but I guarantee the right person will get it. And I want you to take it home this week, and I want you to pray through it the whole week. Pray for that card. Pray for it. And then I want you to fill it out, and I want you to bring it back. So you got to be back next week. And I want you to drop it in the offering plate. And then you know what's going to happen? Next Monday, we're going to Church of the Reconciled to feed them. And not only are we going to feed them, we're giving them all a Christmas card. Not from us, but from you. That's how you give more. That's what we're going to talk about next week. It's simple. But it just may change somebody's whole world. It may change somebody's whole life. And you know what most of them are going to say? I don't deserve a Christmas card. I don't even have a place to physically get one. But somebody showed up in my life. Let's pray. God, as we come this morning, we come wondering what our hearts look like, wondering what our eyesight looks like. God, do we see as you see? Are we able to see the least, the last, and the lost? Are we able to do things outside of our ministry, outside of what's comfortable for us? And God, maybe a Christmas card is just a small token of a much greater thing, of something that's much bigger than we are. And God, today we also come to the table, the place where Jesus broke the bread. He gave thanks and said, take, eat. This is my body broken for you for the forgiveness of sins. He also on that night took the cup. He blessed the cup. He said, this is my blood poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins. And so God, this morning, as we look at these mighty acts, as we look at these two mysterious elements, let us remember what they were given for. God, this morning, as we take up our offering, let us remember why we give our tithes and our offerings. God, part of it's to keep the lights on and to have staff, but the other part is to do your mission and your ministry. And finally, God, these cards, I pray over each and every one of them right now. There are going to be 20 families in our church that pray over these cards and write these cards. And God, someone is going to get these, and it may be the only Christmas present they get. But it may be the greatest present they ever get. God, we love you, and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If I can have our servers to come forward. The cards will be up here. Communion on both sides and then offering right here. Come on.
stand and sing with us.
I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I have is yours. Sing that again. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours. Say that again. So I'll stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. I'll stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours. All I am is yours. All I am is yours.
All right, we got one more to sing together. Let's sing from the inside out.